Hey there guys, it's Joey. So apologies if the light goes crazy in this video. I've chased all over this room trying to find somewhere that's not quite distracting in terms of lighting. Over there I'm like blown out to the point where you can't see my face, and I'm red in another corner. Anyway, so this is a requested video, and this video is Morrigan and then the next step. And I had a request to talk about, well, once you've found the Morrigan, or you think you found the Morrigan, then what? And Samhain got in the way a bit, and I had some time off a bit, so it's a little bit late with this video, apologies. And I've been umming and ahhing about what to actually say in this video, because I don't think my answers are going to be... I think a lot of people really want instructions, and that's not what this is going to be. So if you think you have found the Morrigan, or the Morrigan has found you, to be more correct, I guess, then what do you do? And what happens then? And how does your life change? Well, I can't tell you how to follow the Morrigan. I can't tell you what your path is. I can't tell you who you are. The path of spirituality is a personal one, and it's all about finding yourself and walking that path. There has to be a balance between the finding of yourself, which is separate from deity. There seems to be a lot of defining oneself in terms of deity, and it's not the be-all and end-all. And then there is being the best you that you can be, which I've talked about before. And that's about finding your integrity, your individuality, walking the path that you are meant to walk. And that's the point, the mystery, the question mark. Who are you? What are you here for? What are you meant to be doing? I can't tell you any of those things. In terms of working with the Morrigan and discovering, the first thing I wanted to really actually touch on is the manner in which this question was phrased sounded a little bit panicked, as if it was a worrying thing or a scary thing or something of that nature. If any deity at all makes you feel overwhelmed, or you feel afraid or panicked, there's something not quite clicking there, there's something not quite aligning there in my personal view, because when I found the Morrigan, it wasn't fear, it wasn't panic, it wasn't any of those things, it just everything fell into place and I felt like coming home. And I know a lot of people use that, so I'm going to try and describe that feeling of I felt like I came home. It's a sense of peace and purpose, and it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle clicking into place. It's like, okay, that makes sense. And suddenly all these other things from your past start making sense. So I had a huge love of Samhain, and I'm trying to think of all the different little things that clicked into place. I just bought an Orthioceras spearhead. Like, I had to have it. And she came to me in a time where I needed her. I needed to know who it was. I had been practicing for a long time in the abstract, which is truly what I suggest to people if they were to ask me about. Oh gosh, this lighting is making me look like I've got a black eye. Hang on. Anyway, and if you work with deity in the abstract, then you get to know yourself first, you see. You get to know, and you read around, and reading around really is something I advise. There's a trend right now to sort of dismiss books as if books and learning and reading and getting knowledge is somehow a beginner thing, and I completely disagree with that. The reading and keep reading and searching out of information, finding new ideas and finding what clicks with you and what resonates with you is a lifetime process, and something you should keep doing. You're not suddenly a qualified witch and you don't need to read anymore. Doesn't work like that. And you know, there are plenty of books in the library. There are free books available on Amazon all the time. I shared one on Facebook a couple of weeks ago. It was chakra healing and crystal healing, which is something I'm going to be looking into, so it was like perfect for me. I was like, oh, freebie, share it. And if you see those things and you do have social media, share them with people, and then people know. And you can usually get good bargains with regards to what books you read. There was a really good bargain on The Guises of Morrigan a few weeks ago, so it's worth keeping on tabs on the different books that are out there and the information that you can read. And of course I've already talked about different books that you can read with regards to the Morrigan. And then there's the myths and legends and lore of Morrigan, which I've covered before. And again, I'm not going to tell you every myth and lore and cover it over and over and over again, because that is part of the quest of getting to know a goddess. And with a goddess such as the Morrigan, that's the point. The seeking, the questing, the path walking, the desire to learn, the desire to understand is part and parcel of walking a spiritual path, particularly with the Morrigan, who's all about you do it. I'm going to give you hints and clues, and then it's up to you to figure it out. And because of this, the Morrigan is not somebody who I can give you a path 101 lesson plan. Each person will follow the Morrigan in their particular path walking style. And there are, of course, common threads, commonalities, which we discuss, and I have discussed at length. And you know, there are archetypes and animals and the 3 triple aspect that you can work with, although it goes beyond that. I was just recently talking about the fact that it's quite possible that the 9 Morgans, the 9 ladies of Avalon, were 9 faces of a shape-shifting goddess, and she's very difficult to get your head around in the beginning because of the abstract nature of her, because of the shape-shifting, because the energy moves and flows and isn't still. And this light's going to drive me nuts, I'm sorry, I'm completely distracted by it. And because of that, it's entirely on your shoulders to get to know her, get to know the way that you interact with her, and the way you want to celebrate her, and the way you want to connect with her, and the way you want to meditate with her, and who you are as a person. One thing I can highly recommend is basically realizing that every step in your life, every mundane thing can be infused with the magical, with the spiritual. Some people have this idea in their heads that, oh, I have to be doing this, this and this to be leading a witchy life. And it's kind of like, that's not how I see it. I see it as you should be infusing every thing you do, every mundane, everyday life thing, with a little bit of magic, with a little bit of sense of joy and awe. And see things more than just they were before. I mean, you can take the most basic, boring thing of your life, household chore, say, and you can create something magical about it. You can uplift the energy around it. You know, if you have to vacuum, you can whack some music on, you can sing at the top of your lungs, and that's a spiritual act within itself. It's an act of magic and transformation, of raising your vibration. There's actually something very magical about cleaning, because if you ever felt that feeling when your house looks clean and tidy and you're like, oh, it feels so much better, that's a change of energy. It's a shifting of negativity, getting rid of dirt which harbours onto negative energy. It's an act of magic and transformation within itself. And if you start to view your entire life around this process of self-awareness, self-challenging and self-transformation, then you start to walk a different path, walk differently, start to be more in tune with who you are as an individual. And the great blessing and the great curse of paganism is that it is such a personal path, and this is why there are so many disagreements, because people get very fixed in their heads about a certain way of being, a certain way of looking, a certain way of worshipping, etc. And basically on the other side of that, there seems to be this huge rebellion against that, and then there is a loss of personal integrity, perhaps some morals and ethics go a little bit skewed, and sort of judging people and being hateful comes into it as well on that down slope. So you have to basically decide whom you are right now and who you want to be and where your spirituality fits into that. I personally think spirituality can be infused in a positive fashion throughout every element of your life. And in a positive fashion means that you are not hindering yourself or anybody else because of your spirituality. You're not forcing your spirituality on anybody, including yourself. So if something feels wrong, you should be seeking why and the wherefores and researching and all the rest of it. And, you know, there shouldn't be any judgment on any different other path because there are so many ways up the mountain, you know, just... I think it's charming Pixie Flora who said that originally, and it's so true. You know, there are so many different ways of approaching spirituality that yours is not correct. Basically, the only one, and to think like that is to be close-minded, and for me is against the whole principle of what walking a path with any god or goddess is about, which is discovery, opening your mind, opening your life, and enriching yourself. So the best way in which to start off with this, when everything's a little bit overwhelming because there is so much information to take on, is to journal. And I would journal for the rest of my life, and I will. I don't actually have them in here, but I have a collection of little books in there, and they become a little bit like a book of shadows. And it's a personal journeying thing. And you basically I would start off writing down everything that really speaks to you. Why you think the Morrigan spoke to you, what your experiences thus far have been, symbols that mean something to you, your experiences, your dreams. Dream journaling is a really good one for digging into your subconscious and looking at what's going on. Any rituals, offerings, recipes, things that speak to you, crystals, all things of that nature, and you just journal it all down, and basically that gives you a starting off point for where you start your journey. And it means that when you're having moments of doubt, you can look back at all of that and refocus on who you are and whether all of that is the starting point of something new, or if this is just not for you and you change depending on where you are in the future. Now, I journal, and I have found journaling to be easier when you start with a focus point, and that's why every week I have taken a oracle card or ogam, and the ogam was the most profound for me so far, with the Celtic connection of divination and things. And you start off and you write down your meanings for your oracle or your ogam, and you start to think about it and you research into it and you look into it and you jot down things that throughout the week you notice, and situations you've been through and things that are meaningful to you and quotes that have come up. And as you go through this, you might start to notice certain things in symbolism, and I've noticed crystals, because I do work a lot with crystals, pop up over and over and over again, and you'll be seeing them everywhere, whether it be in media and pictures, or you know, people talking about it in shops, whatever. And you write down the meanings and you meditate with them and you work with them and you see what happens. And I have journaled for years now, and I will keep doing it because it means you have a point of reference. You don't feel so lost, and you write down where you're at and what you want to do and how you want to expand, and you focus on a little bit of everything at first, and then you sort of specialise, which is a little bit like when you're at school and you focus a little bit on everything and then you specialise, because otherwise you're on information overload and you're heading to burnout, which is true of everything. That you need to take time to step back and reflect and not be overwhelmed by the information. And then come back to yourself and come back to a place of excitement and joy, and remember why you did it in the first place. And if it ever feels forced or panicky or not right, then something isn't right and you need to refocus, realign and start again. And that's fine. We work in cycles, in the spirals of life. I consider the labyrinth to be one of the most potent symbols in Celtic symbolism. And it's about, you know, sometimes you have to go back and then over old ground and refresh your memory about things, because you're going to forget things, and you're going to want to be refreshing your point of view, and you're going to want to be rereading things or re-watching videos or re-seeking out information, just so you know that it's in there. You've, you know, solidified your memory and your thought process, and maybe remember something you've forgotten and keep working forward in that motion. With regards to the Morrigan specifically, she can be very, very involved, and then she can be very, very right. I'm stepping back. This is your test. The Morrigan loves to test. And you fail that test, and good luck to you. Well, not really. I mean, it depends what and if you really sort of upset her. I have yet to really upset her. I hope I don't ever. But then, of course, it's not something I would aim to do. I seek to honour her in all what I do, and that's a good point, you know. Really seeking to honour the ideals of the god and goddess that you are working with, because some people get very focused on that it should be offerings and physical items and the altar. Now that's all great. Now I'm a very visual person, and having visual cues really helps me. I work very well with pictures and art forms, and then material items on my altar mean a great deal to me. I go into symbolism with numbers in it, and colours in it, and crystals and statues and pictures and representations, and it all sort of very much connects the dots for me. It's kind of Virgo-y of me, but it kind of all integrates, interlocks, interweaves and makes sense, and therefore forms sort of a spiral of power, a spiral of connection to my deity. And that's why I work very well with altars, and I enjoy that, and it helps me a great deal to have a physical place where I go and worship the Morrigan. It's not an 100% thing that you must have, and you don't have to have a big altar. It just has to be somewhere that you basically switch gears, change your vibration, and it's very helpful to a lot of human beings to have an area, a space, which is more about shifting your energy, shifting your vibration and connecting with deity than anything else. Although I also consider it to be a shrine to the Morrigan. Like, these are all things which represent you. This is a permanent place of honour, and that's why I like having a permanent altar before her. I tried without, I experimented with it to see how it would influence or affect me. It didn't affect my magic at all. It didn't affect my relationship with her, but I missed it. I missed having that permanent shrine to the Morrigan, and you know, cleaning it out and cleansing it and saying words over it and praying over it and all the rest of it, which is all your sort of personal experience. And of course altars are covered a lot on this channel, and if you want to have a look at that and how I do it, then go look at that. It's all in the Morrigan category. All the Morrigan videos are in the Morrigan playlist now, so there's, you know, I really don't want to be going over old ground over and over and over again. Right. But the thing that I think matters most is walking the ideals of that particular god or goddess, and that's going to come from the cultural background of the god or goddess that you are working with, and what they represent. Now, I have talked at length how the Morrigan represents pretty much every aspect to me, because she goes above and beyond the very simplified notions of what the Morrigan is, and that comes with time. You may wish to work with her in maiden, mother and crone form at first, just to simplify things, but as you start to do it, you start to realize that the more you work with her in those three forms, the less simplified it actually is, and it's bleh. It starts, they interflow, they interlock, the shape-shifting element comes into play. There is so much more than just bump, bump, bump. It's not maiden, mother, crone, they're all one. It's everything and nothing all in one complete spiral, and it's very abstract and confusing, which I guess is why some people panic. Except that you're not going to understand everything, and that's half the battle. It's fine not to understand it all. You're human, and it's just part and parcel of the path working, and to feel your insignificance is okay, as long as you're not putting yourself down. To feel insignificant in comparison to the great eons of time and deity is okay. We're not talking about putting yourself down or diminishing yourself. It's that moment of, oh my god, the world is so big, deity is so big. That's okay, embrace that, internalize that, and then realize that that's why we as humans start to see things through a limited scope, because otherwise we go nuts. And think, okay, I'm never going to understand everything, that's fine. I'm never going to know everything, that's okay too. As long as I acknowledge that within myself, that I am not the be-all and end-all, I am not going to know everything, I'm not going to get everything right all the time. I'm just going to do my best, and I think that is the best way of really walking with any deity, especially the Morrigan. And it's kind of like humbling yourself before her, and that works well. Don't smile. She's probably laughing her head off at me right now. Yeah. But basically you have to path walk in the way of your god and goddess. So with regards to the Morrigan, the power word of choice is going to be honour. And this is something which I try and incorporate into my life every single day. How I behave honourably, and what I allow, what I don't allow, and that is primarily myself. Because we are all human, we all have failings, that's fine, but that's often used as an excuse for bad behaviour, and that's the pitfall, the downfall, where people go wrong. We are all human and we do all make mistakes. As long as we learn from those mistakes and keep walking, then that is part of the process. If we use that as an excuse to stop moving, then it becomes a blockage and is not really honourable form of behaviour. And we have to seek out what honour means to us. Why do I think honour is the primary aspect of the Morrigan? Well, that comes from a whole lot of research and a whole lot of working back and forth. People have this vision of the Morrigan as a war, death goddess, okay? War, death and sex goddess, and nowhere in that equation do they see honour. And it's so easy just to start reading some of the Celtic traditions, some Celtic law, some Celtic history, and realise the innate honour attached to each of these things. The great honour it was for the goddess to bestow her sexual relations on a warrior, which would change the tide of a battle. The great honour that came with battle about defining yourself and indeed the land and the world around you in terms of war. And then in death, to behave honourably and to be embraced by the goddess at your time of death into the cycles of rebirth. Honour is present in all of these and every other aspect of her as far as I'm concerned, and therefore walking honourably is my primary concern. We don't always manage it, we have low moments, but basically you have to try and figure out what causes you to behave in a way which you see as honourable and a way that you don't, and what your triggers are and how to avoid them and how to rise above them and how to be the best person you can be, and truly embrace who you are on every level. And that is the next step. Who you are what you want to be, and how you get there, and then doing it, and doing it in such a fashion that you follow this path line as outlined by your deity. Now, honour is the power word I'm going to use for Morrigan because it's the one that makes the most sense. Other words get bandied about, and like I said, the war, sex and death thing, and people, there are examples, and I've had people come to me about people basically misusing the Morrigan to behave badly. I had someone come to me and say they got used by a woman who was a priestess of a Morrigan, and she said it was part and parcel of that to use him in a sexual fashion. And I was like, yes, that's not what, that's so far outside the realm of what I would consider right, that, because that's so far against honour, you know. It really is. But the power word that occurs to you with a particular god or goddess of your pantheon is going to be different. And I can't speak to everybody, and I can't speak to everybody even following the Morrigan. So you have to figure out what drew you to the path of the witch, pagan, Celtic druid, whatever it is, in the first place, and really, really, truly embrace that on a daily basis if you can. So what brings a lot of people is primarily, firstly, in a very abstract way, is nature. So you can't really say that you're fully embracing the path of the pagan while still doing things which you could not be doing easily, and they're harming nature. So littering would be a really easy example. When I go down to the local green with all the trees where all the crows hang out, although they started following me home, I've got some out front and thing, but that's where they really do hang out in a lot. There is a bin on one side of the grovey greeny thing, and people still litter. And so when I go there, if I see litter, I'll have a little bag, and because I'll have more than one little bag for anything that I want to take home, any crow feathers that I see, any leaves, any nuts or twigs or things, and you know, collecting, wildcrafting. And then I'll have a bag for litter. So if I see a lot of, you know, nasty litter around, I'll just pick it up and throw it in the bin, because the bin's right there. I don't understand people at all. But that's something you can do, you know, everyday things to just better improve the world around you. And so when I talk about being the best you can be, it's also about being helping the environment to be the best environment we can be, and that means all sorts of things to all people. And what that means to you as an individual is gonna be different from what it means to me as an individual. Some people are very strict vegan because of this idea. I'm not, and that's just how I see it, and each to their own as far as I'm concerned, as long as live and let live. Then some people are involved in their own nature projects with growing things where they can, being self-sustaining where they can, being ecologically friendly where they can, championing causes for nature, raising awareness, things of that nature, and that's all very much tied into a Celtic pantheon as well, particularly the Morrigan, because the Morrigan is the land. This is something which is forgotten quite frequently. Her very much direct relationship with the earth is quite frequently forgotten. I was reading about her barrows in Ireland, about how there's the symbol of the earth even within it, and there are symbols of the vulva and things. Well, whilst that does have the sexual connotations, it's also to do with her being directly linked to the earth, her relationship with the kings who were directly affecting the earth, as well as her relationships with underground caverns, lady pots in earth terms, and that going into her realm. So she is the earth, and that's very true of a lot of pantheons. You know, there is an earth connection, and the earth and nature is why a lot of us get involved, because we see deity, we see divinity, we see something beautiful and different and unique and incredible within nature, which touches at our souls, which twigs at our astral memories, if you want, and gets us seeking a pagan path. Other than that, the onus is on you, the individual, to figure out what your path is. And there are many different ways. There's meditation, there's communication with the deity, there's simply asking, there's writing down of all symbols and signs that seem to be appearing over and over again. There are plenty of forms of divination out there: tarot, oracle, pendulum, runes, ogum, water divining, scrying, mirror scrying, smoke scrying, so on and so forth. And you basically have to go with what appeals to you. And really just seek. I can't tell you how to be the best person you can be, but I hope that has addressed some of the question. So that video is Morrigan and then, or Morrigan. There is Morrigan path walking on here as well, so check that out. Many blessings.